All right. Hello to everyone and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Carlo Bobilas and I'll be your moderator for this session. I'm pleased to introduce today's speaker, Solutions Architect Rohit Raj. But before I hand over the mic, I do have a few housekeeping items to cover. Today's session will be recorded and made available on demand. We'll make sure to provide those details at the end. Also, we'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. If you are on WebEx and have a question for our speaker, please feel free to send it through the WebEx question and answer panel, where our wonderful panelists are ready to respond. For those tuning into our live stream, we thank you very much for joining in as well. However, Q&A is limited to those via WebEx. We will have a post-event Q&A thread on the Cisco Learning Network community where you can post any follow-up questions. So that'd be a great resource. I'll make sure to send that link to you in the chat shortly. So without any further ado, I'd like to kick things off by welcoming Rohit. Rohit, over to you.
Hey, thank you so much for a quick introduction, Carlo. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Rohit, and I'm Solution Architect for SD-WAN technology under Cisco CX organization. And like Carlo said, today I'll be delivering the webinar on SD-WAN Analytics overview topic. And what you will be learning about today to how to get the visibility into the application and the network infrastructure, and how to improve the forecasting and analyze the effective planning for the resources. And then you will have the analytic dashboard. From there, you learn how to troubleshoot the WAN and application performance issues in your SD-WAN network. All right, so a little bit about some of the agenda that we are covering today. So we will start with an overview of Cisco Catalyst SD-WAN architecture. Then we'll take a look into the what is SD-WAN analytics and how do we onboard into our SD-WAN network and how do we access it. And then we'll take a look into the how do we perform the monitoring from SD-WAN analytic dashboard. And at the end of this session, we also have a demo on the quick dashboard walkthrough for your SD-WAN analytic component. All right, so let's start with our first topic, which is Cisco Catalyst SD-WAN architecture overview. So the Cisco Catalyst architecture has been broken into the 4 plane, and the first plane that we have is the orchestration plane, which is your SD-WAN validator, and which is previously known as in the VBond, which is act as a first point of authentication, and that basically helps in automatic onboarding of your SD-WAN component into the SD-WAN overlay, right? And the second plane that we have is the management plane, which is your SD-WAN manager, that is formerly known as the vManage, Cisco vManage, and that has a responsibility for centralized configuration and monitoring. And it basically provides you a single glass of pane for your day 0 to day n operation. And the third plane that we have is the control plane. The control plane is actually your VS Smart, and now we call it SD-WAN controller. And it has a responsibility to building and maintaining the network topology and making the decision on how the traffic will flow. And the last plane that we have is the data plane, which is, and the devices that is available for the data plane are the hardware-based appliances and the software-based appliances. And they are responsible for forwarding the actual data packet based on the decision that is made from the control plane, which is your VS Smart or the SD-WAN controller. And then we have a SD-WAN analytics. So the SD-WAN analytics basically leverage the machine learning and artificial intelligence to get the insight into the different aspects of your network, like a WAN performance or the bandwidth utilization. And this session is totally focused on the SD-WAN analytics component. All right, so that was a quick introduction on the Catalyst SD-WAN overview. Now let's look at what are the current trends that are happening within the SD-WAN and WAN in general. So we all know that the application are moving everywhere, and the adoption of the cloud hosted application or the SaaS application is increasing day by day. And from the user perspective, they are working from everywhere. Like sometimes they are working from home, sometimes they are working from remote and office location, and sometimes they are working from partner or the different location. What does that mean? That the user could be located anywhere and they could be accessing these applications that are hosted on premises or maybe in the cloud or some of the third-party SaaS application that you could be accessing using as a part of enterprise customer. But from the network operator or the network admin perspective, like you being a network admin, right? It is very critical to understand like what is the traffic flow pattern. Is application going through the right path? that you're supposed to go based on the policy that you have defined. For example, for a particular application, you might have set up the direct internet access or the direct internet access policy to break out locally from that branch, okay? And it is critical to validate that the traffic is really taking the DIA path that we have defined in the policy, or having that visibility whether the traffic is going through the policy that we have defined or not, or is it something really critical. And when something is not working, like sometimes user complaining that he is not able to access a particular application, so in that case it is very important to understand what are all the hops that are involved between the user and application, and then to see exactly where is the problem, if the problem is happening at the particular hops, or find out if the policy causing the problem on that particular hop, or if the network causing the problem on that particular hop, like the packet loss, latency, or jitter. And you might have seen there is a trend where the customers are trying to adopt a lot of digital experience or the monitoring tool or the application monitoring tool that they are trying to simplify the IT operation, or giving you the end-to-end visibility into the health of application, user health within the SD-WAN solution. So these are the various trends, and throughout this session, we will try to look out all of this trend and how we can address some of this trend using the Cisco Catalyst SD-WAN Analytics. All right, so moving on to SD-WAN Analytics overview. So I'd like to touch upon the three pillars that we have within the SD-WAN Analytics. And then we'll go into specifically each of these capability in more detail, right? So the first pillar that we have is the getting the visibility into the network and the application performance or the health. So under this umbrella, we have introduced a lot of wizard using which you can get an overview of health across the SD-WAN fabric, like health of your application, circuits, health of sites that are within the SD-WAN fabric. And then you can also look at what is the health of application over the period of time. And you can also look at some of the historical trend to see how is the quality of experience for the particular application health has been trending over the period of time. Is it increasing? Is it getting better? Or is it getting bad or degraded over the period of time, right? You can also see these as a time series graph as a part of the application dashboard or the wizard. The second pillar is about how we can perform troubleshooting with the more extensive analysis. And this is where we'll be looking at some of the wizard later on this session as well. And here you could see between the two SD-WAN side, how is the traffic is going through, like which path, which tunnel it is using it, and how much bandwidth it is consuming across each of them, right? So there is also the end-to-end path visualization that is released with the 20.14, 70.14 software release, where you can see from the user to application, what are all the hops involved and what is the performance metric on each of those hops, right? And for that, some of the data is coming from the ThousandEye, some of the data coming from the SD-WAN fabric monitoring, and all that correlated to give you end-to-end visibility, right? And the third pillar is about artificial intelligence operations, which is more on the adaptive and predictive network, right? And this is where we are leveraging all of this network telemetry data that we have, and to provide some of the proactive recommendation and also help you in terms of the capacity planning on the best of the circuit utilization that we monitor. We can also analyze the circuit utilization and based on that predict if the circuit utilization is going to up in the future, and to see if we really have to upgrade the bandwidth of that particular branch or not. All right, so with that being said, I just wanted to cover a bit on how is the Catalyst SD-WAN analytics architecture looks like today. So let's have a look in this slide. As you all know that, within the SD-WAN fabric, we might be having multiple WAN edge router, and that you see here on the right side of this slide. And these multiple SD-WAN router, they generate a lot of network telemetry data over the period of time. And using this network telemetry data, they provide an insight into the health of application, circuit, tunnel, and a lot of other things. And all of these network telemetry data are being periodically collected by our SD-WAN manager or the Cisco vManage. Then the SD-WAN manager send all of these network telemetry data over a secure API channel to our telemetry repository, which is hosted in the Cisco managed AWS cloud on every 30 minutes. where all of these network telemetry data will be processed, and then it will provide you insight into the health of application, site, circuit, and a lot of other things, right? And in this model, the SD-WAN manager could be hosted either on-premises or Cisco managed cloud, but you just have to make sure that the SD-WAN manager or the Cisco vManage should have the reachability to push the network telemetry data from the SD-WAN manager to the Cisco cloud telemetry repository, where all of the telemetry data will be processed and then provide you the network insights, right? And what we are doing is starting from 20.15, 70.15 release, which is going to be next long-lived release. And with that, you are having the unify all this capability into the single dashboard, which is going to be your SD-WAN manager. What is meant by that? We are still leveraging the Cisco cloud or the telemetry repository that you can see in this slide, but it's gonna be more like as serving in the background, which is just processing all of the telemetry data and provide you all of the insight from the SD-WAN manager graphical user interface itself, right? And you still need to make sure that your SD-WAN manager should have the reachability to the cloud connectivity to a telemetry repository, which is in the Cisco cloud, so that the manager send all of the telemetry data that is received from the SD-WAN managed router to the Cisco cloud telemetry repository to process the network telemetry data, right? But from the interface perspective, it is going to be just from the SD-WAN manager, which is previously known by the Cisco vManage. So using that single dashboard, you can leverage all of the monitoring insight that are supported in SD-WAN manager and also that are coming from the SD-WAN analytics, which had previously, and in a more unified way and the integrated format, right? And in this model, if there is a customer, their SD-WAN manager is hosted in the air gap environment. And in that case, SD-WAN manager does not have the cloud connectivity to the telemetry repository, right? So then in this case, you will have the options to redirect or fall back all of those SD-WAN network telemetry data to any of the local monitoring tool that you have hosted in-house that should be reachable to your SD-WAN manager, right? And make sure that that tool has the capability to process all of the SD-WAN telemetry data. All right, so now that we have covered some of the basic of the SD-WAN analytics, now let's understand how do we onboard it and how do we access it. So here are some of the things that we should know before we enable SD-WAN analytics. Like you should must have the Cisco DNA Advantage or the Premier licenses. And there is a very common question asked by the user or the customer that, is there any licenses required to onboard the SD-WAN analytic, right? And the answer is yes. As of now, you must at least have the Cisco DNA Advantage license. And if you are using the DNA Essential and some other SD-WAN DNA licenses like the DNA Advantage or the Premier, you won't be able to enable it or onboard the SD-WAN analytics because onboarding SD-WAN analytics does not support mix and match of the licenses. So that means your entire fabric, like your entire SD-WAN overlay must be on either DNA Advantage or Premier, right? So, and there is no personal information collected by SD-WAN analytics. Your individual customer data is also protected and not shared across the other customer, and data is stored up to approximately 1 year as of now, right? And accessing to analytics is done through the username password-based authentication, and the network telemetry data is sent to analytic cloud service over the secure API channel, which is HTTP or HTTPS, on every 30 minutes by default. And this is regardless of your where is your controller hosted, whether it's hosted on premises or the Cisco cloud. You just have to make sure that your SD-WAN manager has the reachability to the Cisco cloud telemetry repository. And in terms of data collection, only management data information collected by SD-WAN analytics, which is more on the statistics and flow. All right, so this is the great visualization for the type of metadata used and collected by SD-WAN analytics. And this list is very dynamic and non-comprehensive. There may be some additional data collected by the purpose of giving you the better insight. One thing that is very important to notice here that SD-WAN analytics does not collect content of actual data packet. And for data flow and getting the network telemetry data from your SD-WAN managed router, we enable DPI or NBARC on your managed router. And the SD-WAN manager get the data from the network telemetry data from the managed router, and then manager send those network telemetry data to the analytic over the secure API channel. So this is totally based on the push model. Talking about the bandwidth utilization and consideration, so this is not going to take much bandwidth, right? A couple of meg at most. You can expect a minimum bandwidth uses depending upon the size of your topology. All right, so this slide talk about like, how do we onboard the SD-WAN analytics, and we have a different use cases and the scenarios. So now going forward, you don't have to open a tag case to onboard the SD-WAN analytics into the SD-WAN fabric or with the SD-WAN manager. So basically you could have a three type of deployment. So let's say we will discuss one by one, right? So let's say if you are creating the new overlay into the Cisco cloud, Cisco hosted cloud, right? And that is your greenfield deployment. So in that case, you can go to the SD-WAN portal, which is previously known as a self-service portal, which is SSP portal. From there, you can create your new overlay like SD-WAN controller component. And during that, you can also, choose the options to enable the SD-WAN analytics, and it will be onboarded at that time, right? And let's say if you are going for the brownfield deployment, that means your SD-WAN controller is already hosted in the Cisco cloud, right? So in that case, you can just simply go to the SD-WAN manager admin setting, and from there you just have to enable two settings like enable cloud services and SD-WAN analytics. Once you do that, SD-WAN analytics will be onboarded automatically once the first communication will happen in the backend, right? And the second scenario is like, let's say if your SD-WAN manager is hosted on premises or the customer network or which is not Cisco managed cloud, right? And again, in that scenario, you will have a two use case, right? So let's say if your SD-WAN manager running on the software release, which is lesser than 20.9.4, you can onboard your, you can get the, OTP or the token from the SD-WAN portal, like the SSP portal. And I'll show you like how you're going to do that later on during the demo part, right? And once you get your OTP and token, right, you can just go to the SD-WAN manager admin setting. And from there, you will need to enable the cloud services. And actually, you enable the cloud services, you will get the options to, paste the OTP OTP or the token that you have got it from the SD-WAN portal, which is the SSP portal. And then you will also need to enable the SD-WAN analytics. Once you do that, the analytic will be onboarded in the backend once the communication will happen. And let's say if your SD-WAN manager is running on the 20.9.4 release or higher on that particular release, so you just have to review and accept the end user license agreement, and there is no further action is needed. And the SD-WAN analytics will be onboarded once the first communication will happen in the backend. The last scenario that we have is the cloud delivered SD-WAN services. So whenever you are creating the the new overlay, during that you have the options to onboard the SD-WAN analytics if you have a right licenses, right? And no further action is needed going forward. All right, so next let's see from the SD-WAN analytics dashboard, how do we perform the monitoring things, right? So the first dashboard that we have here, the summary dashboard. So as soon as you log in the SD-WAN analytics, you will land up the summary dashboard, right? And that offer you the snapshot view of your entire application network, which is available in your SD-WAN network. And you being a customer, you can quickly access the health of the application and the network from there, right? And you can see it is organized into the 4 key wizards. Like you can see the applications, you can see the size, circuit, and client. And for every wizard, it shows the the change in the metric when compared to the previous time period. The time period can be chosen from the 12-hour to 1 hour, and there is also options to customize the the time period. Like you can select the 7 days, past 3 months, and you can also customize the time. We'll be reviewing this dashboard also during the demo. All right, so the next one is the application dashboard. So within the application dashboard, what you see on the glimpse of application overview, where it shows you what are the bottom performing application and the top 20 performing application across the SD-WAN fabric. You can get into more detail where you can see what is the bandwidth that is consumed by each of the top 20 application and what is the quality of experience for each of these top 20 applications, right? Each of these applications could be taken the various path. It could be going over the SD-WAN tunnel, or it could be going over the DIA circuit, which is the direct internet access circuit, right from the SD-WAN branch location. And across each of these paths, we have a performance monitoring that is done periodically in order to measure the health of that particular path, right? And also a different application could have a different threshold in terms of loss, latency, jitter. And based on the application performance threshold and the classes, we will then measure the performance and determine what is the quality of experience for that particular application in terms of how bad it is and how good it is, right? And that's how you can get the quality of experience score per a specific application across each of these applications, these paths, right? And if you see some of the drop in terms of application experience, right, you can quickly check which application to troubleshoot and then see what are the network metrics that are associated with the various path for the particular application is using it, and then you can debug it from there. So what we saw in the previous slide was more on the network-wide view across the SD-WAN fabric. Like we saw what are all the application that is being consumed and the health of those application and so on, right? So let's just say that you are interested into dig deeper into one particular application, and it could be any application from your SD-WAN fabric. But here we are looking at the WebEx meeting as an application, just for an example, right? So what we are seeing here is the health of the WebEx meeting application over the period of time across the SD-WAN fabric. So this is more like a 360 view for your particular application across the SD-WAN fabric. And you can see what is the health, and in the geo map, you can see what are all the sites within the SD-WAN fabric that they are using this application. And you can see individually what is the health of particular application across each of these sites. And let's say that if you are getting a complaint from one particular site and the user are saying that they are facing the WebEx meeting slowness issues or any particular application slowness issues, right, whenever they are trying to that particular application. So let's take an example with the WebEx meeting application and let's see how we're going to troubleshoot, right? So you can see here we have filtered with the the WebEx meeting as an application, right? And for that particular site, like we have selected the WebEx meeting as application just to show you the view of flow and filter, right? And what you see here, the similar kind of 360 view, but on the particular site where the user are complaining it. And now that we are on the particular site, let's say this you are seeing the site 9 we have selected, right? And the circuit that are being used for the application over the period of time, and what are the network metric like loss, latency, jitter across these network path over the period of time, and what is the uses of the application across each of these circuits, right? And this could be helping you in the two different scenario. One, in terms of validating the policy, because it could help you to see the circuit that are chosen by the particular app, like the WebEx meeting application in this case, right? And if they are expected, they are going through the expected circuit that we have defined during the policy. So that's more on the validating the policy use case. And the second scenario is where it could help in the troubleshooting, where that this application is going on these two circuits and it is also suffering from the application performance issues, right? So the next step is to debug why this application exactly having the performance issues across each of these circuits. You also have a support in terms of how we can discover the underlay hops within these particular tunnel that are established by the SD-WAN fabric. So using that, you can also pinpoint to see exactly which hop in the provider network causing this problem, like loss, latency, jitter between the two SD-WAN sites and location. All right, so what we saw in the previous slide, that was more on the application point of view, right? Like we saw the health of application, overall network site health, and so on, right? So we have a similar kind of visibility for one particular site as well. So what you are seeing here in this slide, we have selected the one particular site that we call it Seattle location, right? And that is showing you the health of the particular site. So when you drill down to the particular site, what you could see essentially is the top 20 application that is consumed by this site, and what are the tunnel that are established on this particular site that you have selected, and what are the circuits and the health of circuit that are consumed on this Seattle sites, right? So what we see across the network, same thing we can also drill down to the subsequently per site level as well, or one particular site, and look at all of these metric for that sites, okay? And the use case for that would be if the problem is something generic, right? So let's say if all the users from all of the sites, they are complaining it, then you can go to the the overview dashboard, and then you can do the troubleshooting, right? But if you already know which particular sites or which particular branch location having the problem or user are complaining about it, we then you can directly the filter out with that particular site, and you can see the data for that, or in this case you can quickly filter it down with the particular site using the site filter option that you see here, and then you can do the troubleshooting for that particular location. All right, so next we have the circuit dashboard. Again, it's a very important component that you see here, and that is giving you the better experience for the users who is trying to access the application across the SD-WAN fabric. So within the circuit dashboard, we have introduced again multiple widgets, and using which you can track down the over the period of time, what is the uptime, like one that you see on here, top right hand side, like the top this one, the total uptime, which is, you can see here 98.02%, right? And that is basically showing you the over a period of time. And if there is any outage on the circuit, or if the circuit is down for the certain period of time, or if the impact is happen on that particular circuit, you can see how is the availability for that circuit across the SD-WAN fabric, right? And next you see we have introduced the DIA versus the tunnel uses across the SD-WAN location. So that is basically showing you the how much traffic is going over the DIA circuits, like the direct internet access circuit, or how much traffic is going over the SD-WAN tunnel. And that's how you can see clearly the split of amount of traffic that is going over the tunnel versus DIA circuits, right? And next you see the color and TLOC, so that you could see within the SD-WAN fabric, you could see also the split of uses, like how much traffic is going on the MPLS color or MPLS TLOC, or how much traffic is going on the private one or the public internet TLOC or the color, right? So you can see all of these trends as a part of the circuit dashboard, where you can monitor clearly how much traffic has been split across all of the circuit that has been consumed within the SD-WAN fabric. And you can also define the capacity for a particular circuit, that is starting from software release 20.12, 7.12. We have introduced this feature where you can clearly define within the SD-WAN manager that this is the 200 megabit circuit, and this is the 100 megabit circuit, or the 1 gig circuit, right? You can tag the capacity of that particular circuit, and based on that you can define the value and the current utilization on that circuit, and you can also measure the the percentage of utilization. And this is how you see the trend and availability point of view. And when you look at the trend analysis, like the particular wizard here, you can see the total uptime, this one, right? All right, so this is basically showing you the over the period of time for each of these circuit, what time the circuit was available and what time the circuit was not available, right? So the availability of the circuit, that means that is mainly measured based on the alarm and event that we get generated from the SD-WAN router when the outage on the circuit happen, and when the circuit are not available on that particular location. Yeah, and by correlating all of those alarm and event detail, we can also measure how much time the circuit has been up and running. That means when the circuit is going up and down, you can clearly track over the period of time what is the availability percentage, and is the circuit is being like 80% of time is up running or not. And if there is any frequent outage that you can see here as a part of the graph, that's something you can take insight, and and then you can work with your provider to see and understand why exactly the circuit on particular branch location is having the outage or not been available for most of the time. All right, so the next capability is the underlay measurement and tracing services, right? So this is where you can identify between the two SD-WAN router or the branch site on the SD-WAN tunnel. We see overall what is the end-to-end latency, and then using this, underlay measurement tracing services capability, you can drill down to one particular underlay hub, which could be causing the problem. And essentially what we are doing here, between the two SD-WAN site, we are doing the SD-WAN props, and using which we are measuring the loss latency jitter across all of these overlay tunnel. And we use a similar technology in order to also measure the what is the loss latency jitter at each of the underlay hops between the two SD-WAN locations, right? And that's where you see the latency over the, and whenever you see the latency on the overlay, you can then drill down to the subsequent to all of the hops that are involved in the underlay, and then find out where is the exactly problem is happening within the underlay. All right, so the next capability we are going to look into that, which is the AI ops category, which is artificial intelligence operations. So within the AI ops, we have a two major feature. One is all about how do we optimize the performance, which is where you leverage all of the network telemetry data that we collected over the period of time for the performance across these path, and which path is being used by the application at what of time, and how many times the application is having the SLA violation when it is using the particular path, and then being switched over to the alternative path. So that's all more in the reactive format, where we look into the SLA violation and switch to an alternative path. And for that, we are leveraging the artificial intelligence and machine learning model to predict how many times the SLA violation could happen in the future. And based on that, we recommend to switch to the alternate path. And that is basically helping you to improve your application performance experience further. And the second feature that we have within the optimization category, we have artificial intelligence assistance for your Cisco networking. And you can see and you can use the artificial intelligence assistance that is built in with the SD-WAN manager in order to you have the conversation about how is the health of the SD-WAN fabric and a lot of other things. And for that, we are leveraging some of the operational APIs to provide some insight on how is the application health of sites, and health of tunnel at the given particular location. And this artificial intelligence assistance is also integrated with all of the document that is available online publicly. So you could also ask some of the configuration related questions, like you can ask how to configure cloud on RAM for SaaS, or how to onboard the SD-WAN router, and you can get the answer with the link. Next, we have a capability planning or mitigating issues before the impact could happen. Again, for that, we are leveraging the artificial intelligence and machine learning model to track the utilization trend going on the circuit. And based on the utilization trend, we are forecasting what could be the minimum and maximum bandwidth in future needed on that particular circuit, so that in future you could get get to see overall how much bandwidth utilization could happen on that particular given circuit. And then you can decide whether you want to upgrade on that particular circuit or not. So let's say from 500 megabits to 1 gigs, right? So, and do we really have to upgrade or not? So that's how we get the additional insight based on what we forecast in terms of bandwidth utilization on particular circuit. All right, so moving on to next AI capability is about AI assistance for the networking, right? So this feature is introduced with the software release 20.14 and 7.14, and you can see it is still in the beta phase right now. From the SD-WAN manager, you have the interface for AI assistance for your networking, and where you can ask some of the interactive questions that could be related to configuration or SD-WAN fabric, right? For example, you can ask like how to configure cloud on RAM for SaaS, what is the health of SD-WAN router for particular sites. And for that, it is using the API in the background to get the current input of CPU and memory utilization for particular sites that you have asked. And it will showing you the result as a part of AI assistance interface. Again, for this feature, your manager should have the reachability to the Cisco cloud connectivity, because that's how the SD-WAN manager will talk to our Cisco cloud LLM model, and then provide you the response for the question that you ask to AI assistants. All right, so next we have a artificial intelligence operation predictive path recommendation powered by thousand eye WAN insight. So with respect to the first thing, that there is a predictive path recommendation which is essentially powered by the thousand eye WAN insight, that is using the BFD. We kind of measure the loss latency jitter across the SD-WAN tunnel between the SD-WAN edge location. And using the flow statistics, we measure which path is used by application at what point of time, and when there is a SLA violation happen, to which path, to which particular application is being steered, and to move based on the SLA violation and the policy that user has defined. Okay, so all of this, the network telemetry data, then fed into the thousand eye WAN insight, which will be essentially process this network telemetry data and then provide you the recommendation. For example, like you see in this slide, for Office 365 application on the particular location, what we are seeing here is the current path being used by Office 365 application, and the health is around 60%. But if you move to the recommended path, then it is going to improve the quality of experience percentage by 20%, right? And what does that really mean is this, in a simple term, when you are using the current path for Office 365 application in your current SD-WAN fabric, there is a SLA violation that are happening, and then based on that, the BFD timer that are set, it is reactively moving to the path alternative based path. But in order to waiting for the SLA violation to could happen and to move to the best path, what we could essentially do by this predictive path insight feature is that you can predictive path recommendation, that is basically giving you the prediction that when the SLA violation can happen, and based on the information, it's gonna say that if you move to the better path all the time, there will be very less chance to having the SLA violation, or you're gonna stick to having the better experience by using the best path all the time. And that is the gain of the improvement of 25% that you see in this case, right? And also, in order to how critical to implement this recommendation is about it's going to tell you, like how many number of clients that is going to get the benefit and that is going to get the impact, right? For this use case, you can see the 5 user on this particular branch offices are going to have the better experience once you implement this recommendation, and move to the best performing path all the time. And in terms of licensing, all we need is the DNA advantage or higher licenses in order to use this feature. And there is no thousand eye licenses required, or the TE isn't required for this capability. It's all included as a part of SD advantage.